You know, it's got to be hard to be the middle child in a trilogy. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Kevin Reviews. I just finished watching Iron Man 2, the third MCU film, and this is by Jon Favreau, who returns to direct the sequel ever since the first Iron Man. This is by Paramount Pictures and Marvel Entertainment. It's written by Justin Theroux. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Stan Lee and Don Heck, and the cast includes returning Robert Downey Jr. and Gwyneth Paltrow, and we have Don Cheadle, we have Mickey Rourke, Samuel L. Jackson, and Scarlett Johansson. So the story goes in Iron Man 2, it's 6 months later, and Tony Stark is a celebrity. Now that everyone knows he's Iron Man. And he is loving it. He has an expo, he celebrates. There's like even dancers with kind of the Iron Man skimpy kind of get up. But in any case, everyone is celebrating Iron Man because he's the hero we need, and as well, he apparently privatized world peace. But unfortunately, his reveal eventually sparked interest or dysfunction between him and the U.S. government, who wants to use the Iron Man as a weapon, and yet they can't get it because Iron Man doesn't treat it as a weapon. He treats it as a tool that he uses to help people, but the military wants that. And there's also evidence that that other countries are starting to build their own iron suit. Um, but they're way far behind. But that's not really the gist of the story. The main idea is that we have Ivan Vanko, played by Mickey Rourke, who appears, who shows up at Monaco and with a suit. Well, a kind of primitive looking suit, but a working functional kind of suit. He goes by the name of Whiplash, who takes out Tony Stark, who is in who's in the who's in a race, but no, of course doesn't kill him or anything. Um, but he wants revenge because something Tony Stark's father, Howard Stark, did in to Ivan's father in the past. We don't know a ton about it till later on in the film, but that's it. But then there's another kind of subplot going on. The chess piece in Tony Stark's Tony the chess piece in Tony Stark is slowly killing him. It's it's helping his heart from the shrapnel that's in there to basically to keep the shrapnel away from his heart. But because of the element palladium that he's using to keep the arc reactor in this chess piece working, it's also slowly killing him in this process. And so now, because he's already worked through all these things, and yet he he can't find an element that will work. So now he decides to basically have have a live life, be reckless, and kind of just give things away and whatnot. Even making Pepper Potts, who played by Gwyneth Paltrow, CEO. Then, of course, we have James Rhodes, now this time played by Don Cheadle, and he later becomes War Machine. He's kind of the moral compass with Tony Stark, trying to keep him in line as best he can. But yeah, that's pretty much the story. It's really basically Tony Stark against Ivan Vanko. Again, there's a little bit more to it, but let me get into my general thoughts on the movie. Okay, so if there were no other Marvel films after Iron Man 2, I would have cut it a lot of slack. But now that we have more Marvel films, this and rewatching it again, I'm kind of leaning towards it's not that great. It's not awful. It's not like the worst Iron it's not the like the worst Marvel MCU film, not by a long shot. Kind of used that phrase already. But it doesn't feel like there's much to it. There doesn't seem to be like a lot of passion to it. It didn't seem like it goes anywhere really. And yeah, it's just kind of a dull film. It does have exciting parts in it, but otherwise, you can skip this film and you miss nothing really. But let me get into some of the good parts. I mean, you got the cast is done well. I mean, you got Tony Stark returning, Robert Downey Jr. returning as Tony Stark, and he's still fun as ever. He's still quick wit, snarky, egotistical, and but we kind of like that in a kind of a jerky way. But he's again because of how he's dying, he's starting to become more you know intoxicated, like getting drunk, though not that often. There's like a scene where he eventually fights James Rhodes in two Iron Man suits, and so in a way that it kind of works because there was a part in time in the comics where Tony Stark was dealing with alcoholism. um, it touches that a bit, but it doesn't go that far because obviously you got kids watching, so it doesn't seem like they want to do a lot of drinking involved or showing alcoholism. So, I mean, they kind of do, but they don't go that far. They just don't go that far. And I guess I understand why, but that would have been interesting to explore just a little bit more. Um, I think Ivan Vanko is a cool looking villain. I think Mickey Rourke does a pretty good job. Um, Pretty simplistic backstory overall. I like the suit, especially his first suit that he comes out on, like on the racetrack, which is pretty cool. It's like the biggest thing, like on the poster, and just the better image. Eventually, he comes up with another suit, which is not as impressive. It just kind of looks like a knockoff dollar store version of the Ironmonger suit from the first film. Um, it just didn't look that impressive, really. Um, in any case, yeah, Ivan Vanko does pretty good job. Gwyneth Paltrow again does fine, but they don't really evolve much of her character in this as a CEO, and we don't really see her do a lot of CEO stuff. So she's kind of non-existent in the film. Then you have Don Cheadle as James Rhodes, and again, I mentioned he was kind of like the moral compass. He's more disciplined. He knows no, he's trying to keep Tony in line and trying to make him understand about his the 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 problem with the government trying to take the suits. But and yes, they also because this is a replacement to Terrence Howard. I remember not being a fan of the fact that Terrence Howard was replaced. But over time for this film and eventually later on, I think Don Cheadle does a better job in terms of better chemistry with Tony Stark. Kind of like a similar personality, but more discipline, more moral compass overall. Not overall, and it's kind of like the yin and yang thing. It's both opposites, yet they work together seemingly. I can't even pronounce my words right. Um, but yeah, if you kind of understand what I'm saying. Um, but yeah, I think they got great chemistry overall, and I even like the suit that eventually becomes War Machine later on. Um, then of course we got like Scarlett Johansson's Black Widow, who makes her debut in this one. They don't use her that much, but she does have some great scenes that's is fun and funny, involving like one scene where she actually takes down the director in a ring, and then later on where she gets in her spy outfit and then takes down a bunch of guards. It's really funny. It's really cool. And there's like the last scene where all she does to take down the last guard was pepper spray him in the face, and that's always going to be really funny. Um, there is some exploration in certain scenes, like we get to know a little bit more about Tony Stark's father. Um, but I think that's where, and I mean the action's all right too. The action's fine for the most part. There's also another character involving Justin Hammer, and he can be funny, but I want to get into my negatives a little bit later here regarding him. Um, But I think, yeah, honestly, I think that's all the positive. But unfortunately for this particular film, it falls pretty flat to me nowadays. So, what are the problems? Um, you have because it feels like a filler movie. It's a filler film just to set things up for for the MCU, but it doesn't really do that much. It doesn't further anything. You could have they could have just cut out the entire story plot, the plot thread involving Tony Stark dying from the Palladium because it's not needed. Because I don't think they're going to like kill off Tony Stark early on, in the film just because of blood toxicity. We know he's going to find something, so it just doesn't seem that pointless, and it doesn't really play much into effect later on in the film, other than that he's making things better. And I mean, at least we get to see him actually build stuff and make stuff, and which is kind of cool. But I don't know, it doesn't really warrant it. But he does have a good moments involving understanding more about his father. But again, that's not quite as explored. Um, Ivan Vanko is completely underutilized. Even Mickey Rourke said that he was talking to Jon Favreau, who wanted to make Whiplash a more complex villain, not just as simplistic as you wronged my father, I'm going to take revenge. Um, there was a lot more they were going to do for it, but I guess studio meddling has made just kind of downplayed him with downplayed Mickey Rourke, his character Ivan Vanko, in favor of having the other villain, Justin Hammer, played by Sam Rockwell. I forgot to mention Sam Rockwell in my introduction, so sorry. And yeah, I'm. He has some comedic bits. He's kind of similar to Tony Stark, but just like the the not a great person. He's just cheesy. It's not. He's not a fun. He's not like a fun guy to be around. He's just kind of like he's like the little brother of Tony Stark, one of wanting to be the big brother. He's just failing at that. He's failing at that really. But basically, he wants to make wants he basically gets Ivan out of prison at one point to basically help him build iron suits. But of course, he released a villain with his own goals, so it doesn't seem like it's really a good idea. He's not even a smart person, really. Um, yeah, I don't think he's that great. I mean, I don't think he's bad as in terms of the comedy stuff, but as a villain, he doesn't strike me up as an interesting villain. There's nothing a lot to him. You could make a villain, as threatening as Ivan Vanko or even some of the later MCU villains, if you want, and as least put some comedy in here, but they don't really do anything much for him. He just kind of the geeky guy, the guy you just kind of like roll your eyes at because he's just kind of playing it up, and he's doing it terribly. Um, I don't know. Frankly, I think it's kind of out of context because this is a businessman versus scientist, but I mean, he's kind of a scientist, I guess. Is you got, I think Mandark would be from Dexter's Laboratory would have been is a villain, and he's a fun villain. So I mean, pretty intimidating villain. But again, if you haven't seen Dexter's Lab, I mean, you probably don't know what I'm talking about. But I remember him pretty well, and he was a fun villain. Despite some of his moments where he's not as he's kind of a cringy villain, really. But yeah, I don't know. I think because they do the whole bait and switch with Ivan Vanko um, to Justin Hammer, which in the long run it kind of makes sense because you got Ivan Vanko in a world where he doesn't have a lot of stuff given to him, and so using Hammer Industries, Ivan's not Ivan's Justin Hammer's company to basically build stuff to take down Tony Stark makes sense, but I wish they kind of utilized it more. Even Ivan's backstory is hastily rushed and summarized by Nick Fury later on in the film, so it just kind of just get in and get out kind of thing. So we don't really have a lot of impact with with some of the villains, and even the fight scenes don't really seem to matter that much. I mean, the first fight scene on the racetrack is kind of fun. It's short. It's pretty short once Tony Stark gets the Iron Man suit on. Um, But then we got the ending, and it just kind of feels very lackluster. It's just a lot of drone fights. I mean, some good explosion. It's pretty, and its CGI is pretty good. It kind of holds up. But otherwise, when Ricky Rourke, when Ivan Vanko does come in, it doesn't feel there. It just feels empty. It just feels pretty empty. There's just nothing a lot to it. They could have explored, I don't know, maybe have a flashback involving how Tony Stark's father and Ivan's father, when they used to work together at one point. They don't do that. It would have been interesting to explore, but it just seems pretty simple and rushed. Um, I did mention this fight scene. There were some good ones. There's only like, in terms of the Iron Man, there's only like three fight scenes. There's again the racetrack. I think is the best of the fight scenes. The second fight scene at the end is fun, especially when James Rhodes as War Machine comes in. Then we get this one-on-one fight between Tony Stark and James Rhodes when Tony Stark gets drunk and whatnot, and they start fighting. And I don't know. In a way, it's kind of funny, but it doesn't feel needed because you know they're going to get back or try to settle things and whatnot. But I understand you got to have some kind of plot device. There's also this weird moment or sound editing or sound mixing where they use like a ring bell like in a boxing ring multiple times when they're getting like headshot or hit in the head or something like that, and it makes that ching sound, which I feel like it's I don't know, it seems out of place. I noticed it more. I kind of took it at stride when I first saw it, but now I'm noticing more, and it just doesn't seem to work. But I'm guessing they use that because to help with the comedy, and it doesn't really work. I think, in my opinion, nowadays, at rewatching this. Um, yeah, there's like I said, I think this is a pretty short review because I it doesn't feel like there's anything really warranted to see in this overall. I'm not again, it's not terrible. I mean, there are plenty of worse ones that I've seen in the MCU. Thor: The Dark World is probably the worst of it. But yeah, this doesn't really. You can easily skip this and miss nothing unless you really want to see Don Cheadle be um, James Rhodes. Oh, I forgot to mention there is a funny moment where when Don Cheadle's introduced as the new James Rhodes and Tony Stark comes up to him and just like say, "Hey, where have you been and whatnot?" And it's like James, and then Don Cheadle just says basically, "Look, I'm here. Just get over it," and stuff like that. Of course, taking a shot at people who thought maybe why did you replace Terrence Howard? Just deal with it. We changed characters. So I think it's a little kind of nod or basically just telling everyone, just go with it, please. It's a bit funny. Um, yeah, there's not really a lot. I mean, I even wish there was like more time done like the expo. Like there's more of a like a tour. We get to see more of like the expo, but they don't really do that much, and I wish they did. Um, yeah, I frankly, I'm gonna give Iron Man 2 stars, and probably in probably a D category, D tier, so high D tier really. Yeah, I don't think it's really worth your time or energy unless you really want to see the debut of Don Cheadle as War Machine, and as well as Scarlett Johansson as as Black Widow come into play, but and as well as some developments involving like Tony Stark and Pepper Potts' relationship or how Tony Stark's dad. Otherwise, there's nothing much. It doesn't go really anywhere. So I think you could skip this, but if you really want to follow the MCU from beginning to end like I'm doing, feel free to check it out. But yeah, 2 stars, D tier, D plus really. But what are your thoughts on Iron Man 2? Leave in the comments below, leave a like or dislike the review if you wish. Feel free to subscribe to my channel and click the notification bell so you can be up to date on any more future reviews. And I will see you guys in the next review. Bye.